welcome to this webinar entitled The New Distribution and Corporate Contracting Landscape. It's brought to you by GBTA's Aviation Committee Europe. My name's Callum Hawley. I'm Global Travel Manager for Endeavour Mining and today's moderator. The aim of today's webinar is to identify from our panel of lovely suppliers what the current landscape looks like, both in terms of air distribution and also from a corporate contracting perspective. And we'll hear about the value NDC can offer, the opportunities from the likes of OBTs and aggregators, and where TMCs fit in all of this. So once the environment, the hurdles and the solutions are identified, the webinar will work as a precursor to a similar discussion, but with buyers on stage in Hamburg at GBTA VDR Europe Conference next month. So without further ado, I must introduce today's panelists of experts. Hopefully going to clear up a few things. And I'm thrilled to welcome Jenny Thornton, Director of Digital Services at ATPI, Johnny Thorson, VP of Strategy and Partnerships from Spotnana, and Johannes Walter, Vice President Area Management Home Markets, Global B2B Servicing for Lufthansa Group. Hello, welcome everyone.
Hi.
Hey there. Good morning,
Hi
good
there.
afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
All the J's. I'm the only non-J. So, Johannes, we need to change your surname and you can become a JT as well.
I know. 3 JTs, could you imagine?
Well, we're going to kick straight off here, but before we go into too much detail, I think I know the answers here, but I'm going to kick off with 2 quick fire questions. And they're one answer questions. You're each going to answer both of them. So I'm going to start ladies first, Jenny. So the first one's, is NDC good or bad for the corporate travel industry?
Good.
And is it good or bad for the buyer?
Good.
Great. Johnny, next up. Good or bad for the corporate travel industry?
Very good.
And is it good or bad for the buyer?
Very good as well.
And Johannes, I mean, I have a sneaky suspicion I know what your answer is going to be here, but is it good or bad for the corporate travel industry?
Yeah, I think for both it's a great opportunity and it depends what we make of it.
As I thought. So suppliers are aligned on it, which is what I would have expected. And we'll kick off the on-stage session in Hamburg with the buyers next month with exactly the same question. But I suspect we may see some slightly different answers. Let's hope not, but time will tell. So when I joined the corporate travel industry in 2018, everybody was chatting about NDC. So this was 5 years ago. And by all accounts, everyone had been chatting about it for the 5 years prior as well. But just to ensure that we're all on the same page, Johannes, first, can you maybe explain what NDC is, please?
All right, I'll try to give it a shot. It's not an easy question, I admit, but I'll try. For me, it's 3 things, right? So firstly, I think it's a means to an end. So it's basically a language that helps us as a value chain to engage, to dynamically interact, right? And in the end, for you as buyers and your travelers to enable more conscious choices. I think that's to me the first point. The second point is it's the beginning of a journey. So what I mean is that it's a process, right? And it's the groundworks really for joint innovation. And it also means significant change. And I think that's critical. Thus, I would really label it a journey. And thirdly, it's live and kicking, right? So at least at Lufthansa Group, we do have literally millions of guests traveling on NDC every single month. And the great news is that, and one could say finally, there is also increasing adoption in the business travel space, right? So we see completely new players coming up, entering the field. We see incumbents adapting and changing, and we see above all an ever-growing collaboration amongst the different players to engage. And sometimes these setups are complex, right? We maintain blueprints, for example, where we have the corporate, the online booking tool, the TMC, the aggregator, and us as the airlines really working together and figuring it all out. And I'm sure we'll go into some of these complexities, but I think that the news really is it's live and kicking, it's there, and I think it's the right time to engage.
And thank you for that. And you mentioned there that it's a journey and it's, you know, an adaptation, and we have to adopt towards it. I suppose, what is the main difference? It's just the ability to offer greater choice.
I think it's the interaction, right? So it's the fact that the legacy environment, and I'm not excluding us airlines, right? Who, for us, it's also a change project. We come from often a very production-centric view in a way, right? And for the first time, what our guests are looking for is not a black box, but it really becomes real requests and asks, and we have an opportunity, as we live in a world where I think all of us, especially when it comes to travel, need to make more conscious choices for many good reasons, including sustainability. I think it's very important to be able to surface those offers in a more tailored fashion. And I think that's a benefit in the end for all the buyers too, because programs, of course, need to cater to the changing needs of your travelers.
Perfect. And Johnny, have you anything to add to what NDC is? Is there anything that Johannes maybe's missed that could be classed as a great opportunity of positivity?
Yeah, so of course I agree with Johannes that first of all, this is a well overdue modernization of the way airlines have been selling their product. But secondly, and this is what's so important, it creates a canvas of opportunity for the buyers to start being much more creative in terms of the value they want to get from the suppliers. In the old world, there was no option but to get a seat and then a price from a static environment. In the NDC channel, you can not only get a seat, but you can also get completely new type of services. And that means, as a buyer, you can start and say, for my top 5 city pairs, I would like to have some added value. I don't need it for the rest of my city pairs, but I'm going to sit down with my airlines and agree, because for the first time, the airline now know who you are when you search. They did not know before. And this is one of the best ways of explaining why we need to move away from the old world. An airline will literally blank to who the customer was when the search hit their systems. In NDC, they know who you are down to the traveler level at the time of search. And you can imagine what that means, right, in terms of responding to the search.
And it actually brings me on to an important point within the buying community, where often servicing is spoken about, access to content and the ability to service, once booked and up to booking and once booked. And I suppose from an airline perspective, the ability to service your customer. So, you have that knowledge, who they are, where they are maybe on a loyalty scheme, etc., is huge. But Jenny, where are we exactly in terms of content, that can be accessed and ultimately that can be serviced from an NDC perspective?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll take that question in 2 parts, really. First, it's about how are we getting the content? Where is it coming from? And then we'll touch on what we have to do to get that booking serviced from not just the TMC perspective, but there's the online booking tools in play as well. So how do we get the content? Can we get the content, and can TMCs get that content? Yes, we can. So it wasn't traditionally. The whole sort of start of the NDC journey, if we go back to all those years ago, is this content wasn't going to be available in the GDS. And it was, what are we going to do? We've always used the GDS. We've always done it that way. This is breaking the convention. It's breaking the norm. So there's now 3 different ways, in my opinion, where this content comes from. So first is via Direct Connect. So this is where airlines have APIs that they can integrate into various systems so that content is accessible. So it might be into a travel management company agent desktop, or it might be into an online booking tool. Lots of them out there are doing it very well with Direct Connect links. We've got Johnny on from Spotnano, got great links. I was reading up about your American Airlines connection. There's other products out there who are also doing this very, very well in terms of the online booking tool side. And you have TMCs who are also working on direct links into their agent platform. That's the first way to get the content. Second way is through an aggregator. And when I say an aggregator, I mean the likes of Travel Fusion or a Kite. And they are companies where all of the airline content is available, and it's through one link. So we have people with those types of applications integrated into, again, the TMC environment for the consultants, but also some of the online booking tools you use that way to display their content as well. And then lastly, we've now gone full circle, and the content is becoming available in the GDS too. And naturally for a TMC, that is the most exciting thing for us. The GDSs are all at different levels of what is and isn't available. I can speak quite well about the Amadeus solution because we use Amadeus here. And naturally, that's another way to get it. So there's 3 different streams. Now, just because it's available in those 3 streams doesn't mean that every TMC supports every single one, and it doesn't mean that the online booking tools support every single one. So that brings me on to the service side, and this is where it starts to get more complex. So it depends what TMC you ask as to where they are in their NDC journey, because it is a journey, and it's been a long journey, and an exciting one because it's brought innovation. And I think that's why it's a really good thing for the industry. We had to move away from some of the more archaic ways we have been working. And for all the reasons that Johnny and Johannes have mentioned, this is going to bring greater choice for everybody. And naturally, you want the best price as well. So that's why it's really important. So from a TMC servicing side, I think getting the content isn't really the issue. It's what then happens once that booking has been made. So there are ways to make these bookings quite simply. However, the challenge comes when you want to change that reservation. And every airline is operating slightly differently. It's a lot more cumbersome process. It's not that it cannot be done. And, you know, some of these airlines with direct connect links are allowing the ability to change now. But what that means is just because the airline's allowing it on their API, the TMCs have to make sure they can support that, as well as the online booking technology. And that's where some of the delays and holdups come from. And you have to remember, a TMC, all the automation that a TMC does in order to drive down that transaction fee, we like to have things automated, all was based around the GDS. And a lot of this content now will not be coming from the GDS. So it means that travel management companies have had to take stock and look at their process. And some reacted quicker than others. I'm pleased to say back in 2017, when BA announced that they were moving to NDC, Lufthansa even before that, we had solutions in place. So when the American Airlines news comes along and we have lots of frantic customers on the phone to us, it's not a problem. It's just adapting the process we already put in place. But I think that's the key. It's understanding from your TMC's perspective where exactly they are in that journey. But just because the TMC can do it, a huge part of this has to be around your online booking tool as well. And each of them works slightly differently in how they support the content. So there's both elements that need consideration because, you know, we've got clients with 90% adoption rate. So while it's great that the consultant can do it, the online technology has to be able to keep up with that too. And just because another airline next week might announce they've got NDC content doesn't mean it's going to be instantly available in your online technology, because the provider is going to have to do development to support it. That's
but behind the scenes, you know, so for example, and we don't actually have an OBT at the moment. And there's varying reasons. Yeah, I know there's varying reasons for that. But actually, even if you do have an OBT, your TMC should probably use the word could have access to the content that you require, even if it's not in your OBT.
Yes,
that's exactly where, for the buyers, you now have to decide as a starting point strategically, is NDC important enough for me that I want it? And if so, do I only want it in the TMC channel or do I want it in both channels? And if you don't have that today, then get a clear statement from your suppliers. When can it be there and which airlines will it be there for? And most importantly, to Jenny's point, how are you getting that content? Because all respect for the GDSs and the work they're doing, life will be very hard for them going forward to keep up with the airline innovation around NDC and somehow squeeze it into that old GDS PNR world. We are lucky in Spotnana because we're fresh. We didn't have the legacy infrastructure. That's why we're building our own direct connections. And that means if Lufthansa introduce something new next week, we can build it a week after. We don't have to wait 6 to 12 months until the GDS is doing it. If you use an aggregator, and there's some great aggregators out there, make sure you understand what level of content they provide per airline. This is your most important strategic information as a buyer going forward.
I think it's important to make, and I can say this as a buyer, and I have said it to a number of buyers over the course of the past 6 months. When I sit on, forums and panels or at dinners and events and speak to my fellow buyers, and someone says, I don't have access to NDC, my response often has been, you're not with the right provider. You do not have the right channels in place, because from what I could understand, and it's been reiterated today, it exists. It's not NDC is necessarily happening. NDC has happened. It will continue to happen as we move forward, and ultimately, it's will be, NDC won't be NDC in 10 years' time. NDC will just be airline retailing. And I think that's the important message to all buyers, is that this isn't really something that I'm going to hold my hands up. 2 years ago, even 12 months ago, when people asked me at GBTA 12 months ago in Brussels, I was asked the question, and it's going to bring me on to something shortly, which is some advice for buyers. But I was asked the question, what is your advice for fellow buyers on NDC? And my response was, have patience. And I said that because the fact is, there's no point in denying it's going to happen. It's happened, and you need to get on board sooner rather than later, realistically. However, I also said 12 months ago, I don't really care, because I wasn't affected by it. It didn't affect anything that we were purchasing, and now it does. Now I care, and it's a good thing. And one of the big things that we're going through at the moment is trying to work out, how do we build with carriers at different points in their NDC journey? How do we build it into our sort of contracting? And obviously we're sort of coming into, if not already in, RFP season. And so I know a lot of buyers are wondering where NDC is going to sit in that contracting side of things. I mean, Johannes, is NDC something that you're now actively incorporating into discussions on contracts?
Yeah, I think the two perspectives. First of all, I would definitely encourage all of you, on the buyer side and I think Johnny has hinted to that, right? To really, that is an important choice that you make here, no matter be it the OBT, be it the TMC. I think take it as an opportunity to basically evaluate the ecosystem you're working with, and to surface the true value everybody creates. And that will be different for everybody, obviously, but I think it's a great opportunity to engage. And on the other hand, if you don't, you might really miss out on some of the exciting content that is there and that is to come, right? So I think that is important. And from an airline perspective, we have several differentiations in place in terms of how we can already use the technology in order to bring forward specific products, specific ancillary services. And so I think that will only increase over time. Another example is continuous pricing, which has been a lot discussed, but for us, the way that it works is basically, if there is a contract in place, it is always a discount, not technically speaking, but from a pricing perspective, to the static fare, right? So what happens is you get the more advantageous price point as with continuous pricing, and on top of that, you get the discount that you have negotiated. Right, so
yes,
basically
best of both worlds.
That's the way we're integrating it at the moment, and I'm confident that this will evolve. Right, as the access to NDCs evolves, our contracting approach and strategies will also evolve. But obviously, as you also said, Callum, at some stage it will be the new normal. Right, it will be part of our daily work. Right, and it is getting the pace is getting faster and faster. So I think, like I said before, I think it's really the right time to now review that from all perspectives, and to also engage with, with your counterparts at the airlines, because you will see more and more of this happening. And I'm sure there are a lot of ideas out there also from our, competitors, what they will use this technology for, because like I said, it's only a means to an end. And I think it will enable us to differentiate. And I mean, take our new invests on the intercont side, where we will bring a new cabin interior, where we'll actually start differentiating within a compartment, within business class, for example, the seat types, right? And these are all things where we really enter a completely new way of engaging with yourselves, and that at some stage will certainly also find its ways to the way we structure our contracts.
Yeah, that's quite.
And can I just add?
Oh, sorry, go on, Johnny.
I just wanted to add what Johannes just said is also really important as a buyer to understand that there's still an expectation we will get a standard that keeps everything the same. That's very unlikely, because why would an airline sit and wait for their competitors to catch up? If they have a digital advantage, they should push on and move faster, not slow down. And you can have a standard in certain core data elements moving, but new services being introduced by Lufthansa or United or American or whoever, why would they sit and wait for 2 years until other airlines have caught up? There is no reason that will happen. So don't expect a universal standard to kind of be there. That's unrealistic.
Jenny, have you got anything to add to the chaps?
Not really. I think Johnny's right. I think anyone who's expecting a standard, it's not going to come. And any buyer listening who hasn't started their NDC journey or hasn't started the discussions around contracting with their preferred airlines, it's time to start doing that, because like you say, it's happened. It happened for us at RTMC back in 2017. It's not something that we're waiting for anymore, and you are missing out on content if you do not come along on this journey. We had a customer who we implemented recently in the media and entertainment space. They have BA NDC content activated that they didn't previously have, and now 56% of the fares that they are booking are against NDC content.
Wow. The one thing I take away from listening to the three of you there is Johannes's point when it comes to, we're not just talking, it's not just about price point here. It's not just about fare buckets. The whole concept that you might have two different types of seat, a single seat or a double seat in the likes of a business class cabin, and the ability to book those sorts of things that really starts to get the brain whirring, and you realise it's way bigger, and it's vitally important that we as a buying community are, from a personal perspective, positive about this and try and encourage as much as possible. We like to stamp our feet and stamp our hands on the desk at times, probably when things are maybe a bit unjust. Actually, this isn't one of those moments where it's unjust. It's the right way to move and become more, technologically advanced. Everything else is in the world. Why wouldn't airline retailing? And I suppose, we've heard a couple of snippets of advice to the buying community as we've gone through here, but it would be really good to hear, Jenny, yourself from more maybe the technology side, and gents yourselves with regards to how to access and what content you should be looking for with regards to advice for the buying community. Obviously, we know it's there, it's going to continue, and we've got to get on board. But what other pieces of advice? Jenny, would you like to start on that one?
Yeah, I guess I work really closely with a lot of our travel buyers, and we have client advisory groups, and we talk about NDC quite a bit at those groups. And I think the biggest thing for me is weigh up the impact, because when I'll take American Airlines as a good example. When that happened, we're very good in our industry at overcomplicating things and causing a lot of hype around something. And that's what happened when American Airlines was announced. To me, it was like, okay, it's just another airline that has announced NDC. To our customers, it was, oh my God, I've just heard that 40% of the fares aren't going to be available in the GDS unless we sign up to NDC. And it caused a lot of panic. And then when I had the conversations with the customer, I was like, well, weigh up the impact. How much of this particular airline are you booking on your program? And when you hear, oh, 2%, I'm like, okay, it's not a big deal. So not every single airline will necessarily have the same impact on your program. So that is my first bit of advice. Weigh up the impact, and then you can make a decision as to how you want to move forward.
Thanks. Johnny?
I would say, obviously, what Jenny just said, right? If there isn't a real impact, then don't worry. But if you then find that there is an impact, and every buyer will be different, is it 20%? Is it 50%? Mm-hmm. But once you know the impact, then decide, is the cost of change worth kind of doing something or not? You can wait till your contract period is over and then renew and modernize at that time. Or you can start a small project and run a small number of travelers against an NDC-enabled environment. And this is important. It's not going to be easy to do that in your existing tech stack if it doesn't support it. Right? You cannot force an OBT to suddenly support NDC overnight. So you can find a solution. It could be ATPI, it could be Spotnana, it could be anyone that can provide a temporary small test environment, because at least now you can validate it actually works. And you can also compare fares and see how big is the potential saving that you are missing out on. And I have to give credit to two buyers that were brave on stage with Johannes at BTN, at the Business Travel Show in London earlier this year. We had Ben Parks from Paraxel, and we had Kim Hamer from Visa. They both said on stage in public that by end of this year, they could no longer defend to their CFO why they were losing out on significant savings. They took it to the public surface, right? This is potentially job online. Because how can you keep explaining, we don't need the best fares? My job is to have the best travel program. But for some reason, I don't need the best fares. That's a very hard sell. So you also have to really make sure you understand your environment and what you're missing.
And Johannes?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the topics have been addressed. I think it's about really challenging your own ecosystem, what is the setup that I have, and maybe also finding allies. I think, like Jenny, you have your advisory groups and your buyer groups. We also have, for example, our, councils where we invite our top clients, and they, you can see them also, teaming up and saying, oh, you've got this very same OBT, why don't we address them? It's an issue that we want to bring forward. So I think, once you are conscious about the advantages, and once you have estimated the impact, and there obviously we're also supportive with our teams, right, to help you along the way, because we've been on that journey already for quite some time now. But then, there's really an opportunity to team up, because sometimes a single voice might not be enough, might not be heard, right? So, put your weight also together and exchange and learn from each other. And that's why we are also engaging in what we call these blueprint approaches between the different players. And I'm quite sure that, there will be synergies out of the different types of data feeds that are out there, and be to your favorite duty of care provider or for reporting or whatever. All of these things, of course, need to be set up once, like the servicing topics that we mentioned before, in order for this to work end-to-end seamless for your program. But I think there can be a lot of, snowball effect, basically, in a positive sense, as more and more buyers actively also engage with their ecosystem and their suppliers. And we're there to support wherever we can, because I think in the end of this, and maybe the journey started differently, right? It started in a very disruptive way, but I think now it's time to really get together and to cooperate and to solve for this, right? There's no reason, right, for this not to happen now.
Yeah, I think you just nailed for me there that I'm a big advocate for communication in all walks of life, but especially in business. And it's very easy for us to sit on buyer advisory boards or suppliers all together, but actually, and my biggest sort of piece of advice, if anyone ever asks me in the buying community, is speak. Speak to your suppliers, speak to your TMCs, speak to your carriers. Tell them what you're thinking. Don't assume that you haven't got access, or that it doesn't affect your fares, or it won't work out better value for you in the long run, both in terms of financially more effective but more efficient, and greater service as we go down the line as well. So I think that's definitely a really, really good point there. So
I think another angle, and Johannes, you're not going to like this, right? But sustainability is going to be a major winner from NDC, because we can distribute relevant information much faster in that channel than we can, squeeze it into the old world. And the likes of Lufthansa have already introduced so-called green fares. They have a lower carbon footprint. However, they didn't think through how to get the lower carbon footprint through to the likes of us and ATPI. So hopefully we will find a way where they can communicate this is 20% lower CO2 because we have SAF embedded, or there's a post-trip offset happening. That can be done relatively quickly with the NDC channel. It's just a new data type going in. It'll probably take 1 year or more to get into the GDS environment. So new
but I think
services,
you
new
hit
requirements.
You're working within an agile environment opposed to a static, antiquated environment.
Yep.
And so, it's no different to any other system that businesses are using. First of all, it was cloud, and then it, community support and the ability to alter and change, develop very quickly. This is just that version, but for us in the inventory world and the distribution world. So before chatting today, I wrote down some statements which have come up over the course of the months in the buying community. Some have sort of actually already been answered. I'm still going to ask them, not ask them, but make the statements. And just because why not? It's fun to sort of say controversial things. One in particular is quite controversial, and should you wish to not comment, you are more than welcome. Obviously we do all represent a company at the end of the day, and I don't wish to get anyone into trouble. So I think the first one, personally, I think you've answered very well today, all three of you. But NDC is not about better service to customers. It's just about making more money for airlines. Johannes, I'll come to you last, if that's okay. Jenny, would you have any views on that comment?
Yeah, well, just that I disagree with it. And I think today and what we've spoken about is really covered why.
Johnny, I imagine that you disagree, don't you?
Yeah, I'd say, of course, it's about better price for the right customer, for the right trip, but it's also about much better servicing for the traveler during the trip, and also to be able to add new value to the corporate buyer, so the buyer looks better in the eyes of their travelers.
Absolutely, 100%. Johannes, you go, and then I'll respond to that, because Johnny's that's a great comment.
No, naturally, I disagree, and at the same time, it's also important to state that this is a lot of invest for us, right? So, I mean, from an airline perspective, it's not only about gaining efficiencies, but it's about making a better offering, and this is not only driven by the distribution pipes and technology that we use, but and I named the example of our new intercon cabins that are coming next year. It's really going into $1 billion type of invests in terms of aircraft, modern aircraft, more sustainable aircraft, and so on. And we want to be able to surface that value basically to your travelers, and that is of course crucial for us. And yes, of course, we want to compete and we want to differentiate ourselves. I think that's also no secret. But I think in the end, we can only do this if we're able to enable these more conscious choices. And it's a learning journey, Johnny, the example you mentioned before, it's a more iterative approach, and we are also learning on the way. And again, we can only do this together.
Johnny, you said a comment that's very close to my heart, which is what I often tell people. Our suppliers are only there to make us look good. And absolutely, if getting, greater content, lower fares, and ultimately, doing what's at the forefront of technology makes us buyers look great, then I'm all for it. NDC will cost more money than an Edifact ticket once charges and surcharges are applied. Jenny and Johnny, this is probably a more at your end than it is at Johannes's end. Jenny, is there a comment on that one?
Well, I don't really agree with the comment either. I mean, it isn't just about the price. Of course, it's about the price. We all want the best fare, but we've talked about it before. It's all about the choice, the flexibility that will come by using these types of channels. There's also elements, what will come with this is, and I know Spotnana are already doing it actually with American Airlines, you'll be able to change these yourselves as well. There'll be less interaction needed with your TMC, which is when more cost tends to get applied. So no, disagree.
No, I'm very excited by the concept of changing stuff. I mean,
oh,
yeah.
wow.
Everyone
gets very excited about changing tickets.
Johnny, anything to add to that one?
Only that I also disagree. I mean, for us, we only charge per trip. So where it comes from, it doesn't matter. It's a trip. Traveler goes on a trip. They don't go on a booking. But as Jenny just said, right, by providing more self-service, we're actually driving the cost of servicing down. And most travelers would like to do more themselves. They are tired of being told, I'm sorry, you cannot change your return flight. You have to call in or email or chat, which is not okay in 2023. Of course, you should be able to change the booking yourself. So self-servicing will literally result in much lower cost of service from the TMC community.
And I may,
so my last,
maybe
Johannes,
just,
just
want to add maybe just two thoughts. One is, I truly don't believe that will be true in the end. I think we've, as Lufthansa Group, we've chosen a strategy where we make the cost of the current system very transparent, right? So we've got fees that are very transparent and differentiated. So I think that enables more conscious choices also on that front from a buyer perspective and to basically do the math. And on the other hand, I think there is of course, and I think we need to appreciate that there is a change process, right? So there is an initial invest. I think that is fair to say, but over time, efficiencies will definitely come. Automation will increase. You know, we're constantly working on improving also our own capabilities with our own API, not only challenging aggregators, OBTs, and so on to do the same. So yes, there is an initial invest, but we've also chosen the path, and I'm saying this very transparently here, where we support the transition, right? We want this to work for everybody.
And my final comment is one which gets bandied about, not just from buyers, but from suppliers as well. And should you not wish to answer this, then I'm more than happy for you to not answer it. But one of the big hurdles the industry has had is that the large TMCs, the behemoths, are hesitant to invest in NDC, as they'll ultimately earn less money than they would through old Edifact tickets. Johnny, you're nodding, which makes me think that you can say something.
I am, because based on the evidence we have seen so far, that is true. We haven't seen the so-called mega TMCs kind of be the first out there saying, let me find a way of make this work. On the contrary, and I can only refer on what we're hearing from our customers, that some of them are introducing a surcharge on the service fee of, a few percentages. Some are saying you will not get access, or there will be an incremental fee for getting this so-called alternative content available. That's okay. That's a business model decision. But normally you need the big leaders in an industry to go first and say, this is, how we can solve this problem. And I do think that's one of the reasons it's taken so long for NDC content to really get a foothold in the corporate travel world. The leaders have not been the most proactive, no doubt.
Johannes, do you have anything to say on that?
No, I think I can reiterate one point that Johnny has said in terms of in the end, it's also a business model question, and it needs to work for the industry. Nobody profits from an industry where somebody feels left out or left behind. So it needs to work for all the parties. But I'm really, really confident that there are ways to achieve that together in the interest of the buyer community as well. Absolutely. And
but
secondly,
surely they will have to sort of conform as times move on. And
and secondly, I mean, just of course, some of these, and we've touched upon this initially, I think, Jenny, you've outlined that as well. A lot of the technology has been built up over, let's face it, decades, right? So, I mean, changing something that's been built up over years and has been also very much tailored to buyer demands and so on, it takes time, right? And it takes an invest. So I think, I think it's fair to say that also in their defense, right?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpick.
And last but not least, I do see movement, right? So, things
that's
changing.
positive, absolutely.
Yes.
Jenny?
Okay, so I might not answer the question directly.
No, that's absolutely fine.
But what I will say is I'm still amazed at the amount of customers I go out and meet who do not have access to this content. And speaking from ATPI and the TMC that I work for, we looked at this back in 2016, 2017, and said to ourselves, what's the risk if we don't come along on this journey? And the risk is we are not going to deliver what we promise. And what we promise is to deliver our customers the best fare. So we're ultimately at risk of losing clients. So what are we going to do? We're going to come along on that journey. And that's all I'm going to say.
So, I mean, you should be in Parliament. I mean, that's an excellent answer.
So, knowing that you're going to show this, I'm going to poke the bear a little, right? And I'm just going to say that I don't think it's good for anyone to create a list of 162 items of reasons why it doesn't work, instead of focusing on, let's find 10 reasons that it does work. And then we find 10 more. And suddenly we're looking at the future instead of, looking at protecting the past. Because squeezing NDC into the old way of working, that's not a good outcome. So that we are here, it does work. You've heard from Jenny and from myself that we have happy customers consuming NDC at scale, and it's just a way forward. So you can buy in the old world or you can buy in the new world. That's a strategic decision.
I feel that if we were on stage at this point, you could probably just drop a mic there, Johnny. That's the best way to possibly finish, really. I hope that the three of you can join us in Hamburg. I know that Johannes is definitely due to be there, so please do come and heckle. And to anybody watching, please do also come and join the Aviation Committee session with a panel of buyers to hear the other side, and I'll be able to be a bit more what's the word, journalistic maybe, and ask those hard questions and maybe say some hard truths that have come from today. But thank you, Jenny, Johnny, Johannes. There's a lot of practice there. And hopefully see you all soon.